How's it going, everyone? VenomousStare back with another StarCraft cast. And this is a 2v2 game, and it's pretty goofy. A little bit different. This isn't going to be so much a guide video as much as it's going to be something funny. So we got to back it up a little bit, because we have a very terrible cannon rush happening. The one pylon, one cannon with pretty much all the surface area around it. Very, very easy to stop. And the Terran should exactly just lift off. So Victor, the red Terran, dog hair on my mouse, here we go. The blue Zerg, Savagewood, our protagonist, as it were. On the other team, the blue, and by blue I mean purple Terran, Sleek. And the blue Protoss, the cyan Protoss, way smarter. The map Overgrowth Facility is one of my favorite 2v2 maps. And after one cannon and one pylon, Victor says, "I'm gonna need help, I think," as the probe tellies out. And Savagewood says, "With what?" Almost to ask, "You're gonna need help with this? How is that possible? The first two units you make are Marines and tanks, which are good against this measly cannon rush that is quite frankly ridiculously easy to take care of, because good cannon rushes are positioned in such a way where you can only attack them from very sort of sharp angles, choke points. And I want to see if Victor micros all the way back here if he can hit this, but I mean, when you stand right here, obviously the cannon's going to be in range. But he could have waited and just built up SCVs and done a tech lab swap if he really wanted to. He's going to be scouted a little bit, and I'm going to come in here with a few lings and say, okay, I guess I'll... Oh, that was for the Reaper, I suppose. So at this point, he has so many Marines, he can just like A-move the one cannon. He's like, okay, I don't need help with anything. False alarm, false alarm. Savagewood has two Overlords up on these little towers. Zergs, I recommend this spot. Gives you so much vision in conjunction with your one tower. And if people run by, usually they'll try to attack them with like their first set of units or one thing, and you can move them to the center if they're ground units. Savagewood has made a lot of drones. He's teching into lair. He has a roach horn, as well as an evo chamber, getting +1 range on the way. And if we go to the income tab, Savagewood is far ahead of everyone. The Terran Toss team is establishing some defense at this neutral ramp with a tank. And the Protoss has a nice little Sim City here. I think in current day StarCraft you want to sort of have like a battery at every one of your front doors. You get so much bang for your buck, it's almost always worth it. It's almost as much defensive capability as a sentry. The only thing that is really, really bad against is the Baneling bust. More tanks here from Sleek, and he's getting Cloaked Banshees. So one of the things that you want to do on this map, in any 2v2 map that really just have two neutral ramps, is that's where you want to stack your static defense and your sort of static defensive units like tanks and liberators. These are the two big choke points. Notice Savagewood does have a ling out here, and he's getting some Overlord spread because there is a lot of dead air on this map, so you have to be wary of being dropped. He also has one Overlord here sort of helping his ally look for drops. Ling out here and out here. This is one thing I've been trying to do more when I play Zerg, is click lings out of my control groups to get map vision. It's so cheap for the amount of vision you get, because especially in 2v2 people will just attack with random unit sets at random times and you can get caught off guard. So you really want to be obnoxious about having vision if you can get away with it. And the way this map is designed is so that if you just take the tower and watch the middle and then watch the edges, it's a pretty good defender's map because of the two ramps. But this is really bad. See, Victor has his defensive units so far back that it won't even protect his front door. Like if he wanted to be like ludicrously selfish, he would have all of his stuff up here, or but really even here, because then he could take a third. But see, all of the units are attacking our Zerg friend. Now Victor will move out, and crucially he doesn't have combat shield. He got the concussive shell, but he doesn't have a single marauder. So Savagewood sees that it's 2v1, so he just has to bail out preemptively. And that sucks whenever your rally goes out. You're trying to get everything squared away. And Savagewood was caught making a big round of drones there, right when the attack hit. But Victor has his combat shieldless drop doing some real damage in the main of purple. The purple Terran Sleek will attack. He has a hefty amount of siege tanks. Savagewood's Hydras are trying to pick off the air units, it looks like. And they get eviscerated. Victor does have one tank. It looks like he's going to try to siege the other. And we need to go to production because Savagewood's making 5 Hydras. And in this case, when there's 4 tanks stacked this close, sending in your Hydras like this, although it's tempting, yeah, you get the one tank. It's just a mistake. You want to wait for your round of Lings to come out, because without support, these tanks can't do much, and if they do just unsiege, you can really hunt them down with Hydra still. So if Savagewood had saved those 4 Hydras and went in with everything at once, I think he would have held without this being able to unsiege. And he still has a 4th base. Meanwhile, a huge attack is going on in the main. It's really just Blink Stalkers. There were no units in here, and we see the first thing to die was the orbital. The red continues to do drop in the main. Continues to do damage with the drop in the main. We have some purple SCVs hidden over here. And Way Smarter is picking off tech labs and reactors. So whenever you have one stray overlord, or one stray liberator, excuse me, it can actually be really useful for both defense and harass, so you don't want to neglect these. Savagewood's going to come in and try to defend. There's just a couple zealots left. So Victor, I'm not sure what he's doing. Savagewood's getting +2 carapace. Getting his economy really booming. A huge Blink Stalker army of Way Smarter comes out. And I think a lot of people in 2v2 like to play this style just because it's so much fun to micro. Look at that, he just blinked like half of his stuff over the cliff for no reason. And then he ran the opposite way for a bit and decided which way he wanted to go. That's really funny. He will catch the drop of Victor, no blink needed. Victor does have one drop still. No combat shield, no marauder drop. That's the concussive shell. No combat shield drop. And Victor's Liberator still idle. You know, if it was here it would be useful. If it was here it would be useful. And there's obviously the quintessential newbie Terran harass where you can just click it right over a command center and make it look a donut, and it's like, well, if they didn't make any turrets, that's great. Obviously you want to set your Liberators up like in the corners. Make them really hard to kill. The most obnoxious thing is when you get the Liberator range and you can siege them up out of the area. I don't think you can do it on this map per se, because the area behind them is pretty vast. But on some maps that don't have a lot of area behind, you can siege up Liberators in a spot where like Stalkers can't get to them. It's really annoying. But in 2v2 a lot of people just click the Liberator right on top of the CC. Colossus are coming out here for Way Smarter. He's getting +3 attack and +1 shields. He's also getting Templar Archives. I think Protoss players, you need to be getting this every single game versus Zerg because Storm is good against pretty much everything they have. And if you can't abuse Vipers, then Protoss is way harder to beat. So Savagewood's trying to move out, but the first Colossus is shown here. And he's just going to try to play defensive with these lurkers, it looks like, because I think it's on some level he knew he couldn't get anywhere close with the Hydras. But this is a very dangerous army for the player using the Hydraless composition. Lurkers are still really good, and we don't see an observer here. Savagewood's going to move up on the corner, which that's a great move because then you're really maximizing the range. Lots of damage going down onto these Stalkers, but again, the Colossus is so good at cleaning up Lurker Hydra. He doesn't even have Sentry using Guardian Shield, which is something that actually helps quite a bit. Against this particular comp, at least. Savagewood has a hefty amount of Hydras. The Colossus weren't really diligently microed there. He sort of split his attention. That's one thing about using Blink Stalkers and committing so much to them, is you get in these mindset of like, all I need to do is micro my Blink Stalkers every fight. And he's trying to snipe down those Colossus as Savagewood. Meanwhile, in Camp Victor, he's looks like he was thinking about moving out there. Savagewood gets both Colossus. There's one new one out over here. 2 tanks are out for Sleek. And Sleek has taken the gold base, and he's done it with an orbital. He's also made some buildings out here in an effort to sort of say, well, I'm probably going to get attacked and die again. Savagewood kills the tank, and it looks like he's going to lay waste to the rest of this base. Some Colossus Stalker coming up to help defend. This time he has an observer, and Savagewood has no lurkers this go around, so it could be rough. But without sentries, it's not really as abusive as you think. So he loses one Colossus there. And he's trying to continuously attack on the Protoss army to keep that Colossus count down. Because once Protoss gets about 4 Colossus and you don't have Viper, it can be incredibly brutal. Even if you go Lurker, because they can really outrange you. Viper is the key to all of this. And you really have to consider the fact that High Templar are good against Viper. That's really the Protoss answer to the late game, in my opinion. It's just so good in almost every scenario. So Victor's trying to do some Liberator harass here. Let's see, there was damage, so maybe I missed something. So it has 10 kills already. I guess you really, let's rewind it again. We have to see this in real time. So over here the fight's going on and the Terran player is trying to be very diligent about his tank spread. Let's watch from his point of view what this is like. Okay, nice blink, nice blink. Don't worry, I'm moving the next one forward. By the way, don't be like this guy. Click on a tank, hold shift, right click, and hit E. And you can get like, there were the 10 kills, he just wasn't watching. So, like I was saying, you can just select individual tanks, hold shift, left click, and then right click E basically. Or hit E after your left clicks rather. And then once your tank gets to that position, it'll siege. Is significantly faster than clicking them one by one like you're doing some dedicated slow push one. It's premeditated micro as the Liberator does go down there. If you can do things in StarCraft premeditatedly as opposed to on the fly doing them live like as a reaction, you're always going to perform stronger. Because you'll get to a point when you've played so many games where you can just do the action rather than having to think about the action. And essentially that's what good micro looks like, is when you know exactly what you're doing when you're going into it. There should have been an observer with this for sure. Or an overseer rather, to kill observers. Because you can make the Protoss' life a living hell if you're diligent about targeting down their observers. When you have this many lurkers, it's very, very hard for Protoss to engage. They can pick and prod at you like this, but if you can really force the issue, it can get rough. But with 6 tanks on the way, Savagewood's army is pretty much toast. He wants to do all he can to fight on these, but his Overseer just got here to be annoying. Which, by be annoying, I mean kill the Overseer. I'm going to try to retreat the lurkers. Oh, maybe he thinks he can't. There's too many tanks because he just tried to do that with the Hydra and it died. And mercifully he's going to turn around. He does have Hive, and he's getting 3-3, which is nice to see. It's very important to get this upgrade, Adrenal Glands. And if you're going Lurker Styles, this one is a must as well. I've re-hotkeyed all my upgrades to ASDF, so if I'm playing Terran, +1 attack, +1 defense is AS, and like this game if I went range and Carapace first, it was S and D. Another drop is going on, so this is basically like a rerun of 10 minutes ago. Victor's going to do significant damage while Savage tries to hold the 2v1. He's way more ready this time as the macro Zerg. He burrows his lurkers. Still, if you don't have Vipers against this comp, it's going to get really filthy, like all these Hydras being butchered. He's going to use the death of all those Hydras to leapfrog his lurkers forward. And thankfully his allies brought a Liberator and mercifully sieged it on the choke. He's brought a couple Vikings. And Vikings, of course, are the counter to the Colossus, always have been. And remember earlier when I mentioned the lack of combat shields, it makes it where you can't really take Colossus shots. If you're, look at that, I mean that's just filthy. Honestly, if those were, let's just say if those were stemmed Marines, or combat shielded Marines rather, that were stemmed, and a Marauder, you would have been able to easily kill at least one Colossus. So it's a big deal. You always want to do this. You always want to siege a tank on this cliff, right by the tower, so it gives you the vision. Siege tanks always have more range than just their vision provides, so ideally you always want to accompany them with units that let them see stuff. Like if you're just Terran, have a siege tank here, or maybe even on the corner, and then a mine out here so it sees stuff coming. Helps the tank see the enemy, and it lets you know when to scan. Way Smarter's army is relatively small. His third has been destroyed. He's sort of mining the sloppy seconds of this gold base. His main is virtually empty. His natural oversaturated. Notice he spent a lot of money on cannons, but the Terran player Victor has only been dropping in this, like this little square. That's the spots he's dropped in this entire game. Terran players, especially less experienced ones, if a drop works in one spot, they're going to keep going back to that money spot. They're not going to try to mix it up. And that's sort of true for harass in general, especially if you're actually intelligent and drop in a spot that's actually weak. Like this is a really good spot to drop because of the airspace, and you can do your damage and fly into the next guy's natural. This is in like the early game if you're doing 2-2-1. But like the guy's flying all the way up into his main. It's not like he's dropping down here and stimming in or even dropping on the corners. But it's 2v2. I mean, for God's sake, the guy hasn't even gotten combat shields yet. He's just now getting +1, 19 minutes of the game. Savage would mercifully made Vipers. Let's see if he can micro it all. So you want to pull the Colossus here, and if you have an army, if you're not bad and don't let everything die before you actually use Abduct, what the hell was that? Then ideally you just pull all the Colossus into your Ultra Roach Hydra army. Now thankfully Savagewood is on 5 base, 60 perfect saturation, a little bit over on each one. That one's mined out, that one's almost mined out, and he's taking this gold, so he still is alive and kicking as far as macro goes. Lots of income still. He's been diligent about taking bases, and Way Smarter quite simply can't defend this Zerg mix, and that's the game. Victor and Savage would take it in what was a goofy 2v2 affair.